In a connected world, when your business depends on the availability of your data, can you depend on your backup and recovery solution? Year after year, over 262,000 organizations around the world and 74% of Fortune 500 companies see Veeam as a trusted partner to ensure availability of virtual, physical, and cloud-based workloads. With 91% of our existing customers confidently recommending us, we've achieved our highest customer satisfaction ratings ever. We've not only met the industry benchmark, we've doubled it, making us the industry leader that customers trust most, because we listen and are on hand to help when they need it most, with products and services that meet both the demands of today and the challenges of tomorrow. Number one availability for any app, any data, any cloud.
Now, please welcome Anthony Spiteri, Global Technologist, Product Strategy, Veeam, together with Alexander Thomson, Sales Director for EMEA and APAC at N2WS Software.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. As mentioned, my name is Anthony Spiteri. I'm a Global Technologist in the Product Strategy Group here at Veeam Software. So just by way of a little introduction, what does a Global Technologist do? Well, I come to events like this and I present on the Veeam products, but also my strategy is to go and speak to customers and provide a feedback loop to our R&D. So really excited to be here today. And I've also got Alex. Alex, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Good morning, guys. It's great to be here. It's been 10 years since I was last in Singapore, so it's been a nice excuse to get back. Myself, I'm the Sales Director for EMEA and APAC at N2WS Software, based out of the UK, leading the sales teams, obviously, around N2WS, and excited to share with you what we have today.
Excellent.
Over to you, Anthony.
Thank you very much. So let's go through a little quick agenda here. So we're going to actually, silent theatrette's quite interesting. So obviously I can't really see you guys' reactions, but hopefully you can hear me okay. But we'll move through that. So the agenda is I'm going to go through a little bit about our vision, our strategy from a Veeam perspective. We're going to then have Alex talk about N2WS, which is a recent acquisition that we just made. And then I'm going to finish off with talking about some hybrid technologies, about how you guys can leverage AWS for your hybrid on-premises locations, talking about virtual tape libraries. And I'm going to finish off talking a bit about what I'm quite excited about, which is our VMware Cloud and AWS and how Veeam helps provide availability for that. So starting off, you saw in the video a little bit of these numbers. So Veeam at the moment, the number is actually 260-odd thousand in the video, but recently we've actually gone up to 283,000 customers across 180 countries. We're in the 74% of the Fortune 500 companies, and we're actually adding close to 4,000 customers per month. And that might seem like a lot, but there's actually no truth of a lie that we're adding that many customers a month at the moment. We traditionally came from a position of backing up VMs. So obviously when virtualization was born, we were born in that space as well. And as of last count, we're backing up close to 15 million VMs through our customer base. But probably one of the biggest numbers that we're really proud of is our NPS, our Net Promoter Score. That's at plus 73, which for you guys that know about NPS scores, that actually is up there with industry leaders like Apple and other guys like that. So we're very proud of that score. And compared to other vendors in the space, we're actually streaks ahead of that. So it speaks a lot about our customers and our products there. In terms of the vision, where Veeam sees itself, our technology is based around the fact that today, digital lives dominate our world, okay? We understand you guys are here at an AWS event. You're looking at your phones at the moment, hopefully not looking at them all the time, but you're looking at them. gathering data, you're creating data. It dominates our digital lives. Just looking at those phones, getting a message, looking at an email, creates endorphins. It creates the same sense of excitement that we get when we do something really well in an event or when we succeed at some place. The endorphins that we get out of these particular devices are significant, and we rely on those, okay? If I think about my son, he is 8 years old, he's got an iPad and he plays a game called Jurassic Park, okay? It's a dinosaur game, he's infatuated with dinosaurs. A couple of weeks ago, he was playing the game and the servers went down, okay? The online servers. He was in a state, he couldn't create his dinosaurs, he couldn't get experience points, and it was a great example of the fact that we, no matter what age, require confidence that the technology that we're using to drive our lives is going to work, okay? And Veeam believes in that. And when we look at the fact that data of today is effectively the new oil, okay? I'm sure you've heard this before. It's been talked about a lot at these industry events when we say that data is the new oil of today. And, you know, the digital economy by Forbes in 2020 is expected to be $1.36 trillion, okay? That's just money that's being thrown into our digital lives. And again, you guys being there, your customers, whether you're a managed service provider, your end users, enterprises, you're all contributing to this growth in data. And in that growth, we know that data is now hypercritical, okay? We understand that, again, that release of endorphin that you might get from a message is a single event. But you guys as customers, generating programs, looking at your data that you generate on a daily basis, that is critical to your operations. You guys know that running a business, if that data was jeopardized, you would have issues. It's going to cost money. So we're talking about, you know, the things that you can see there. We're talking about, you know, personal identifiers. We're talking about PKI infrastructure, lots of security. The intellectual property that you guys are creating is critical. And because of that criticality, we've gone to the point of where data is now growing at an exponential rate. If we look at traditional backup software, or we look at traditional software, structured data, we talk about traditionally SQL workloads, we talk about MySQL and Oracle, okay? That's shifted a little bit, especially in the AWS world, this unstructured data. We know about the database engines that exist, the serverless technology that exists within AWS. So we've gone from this growth where we've got the data on premises to the growth where the data is now basically distributed across, you know, an AWS infrastructure, a serverless technology. Applications as well. We look at our traditional applications, Exchange Service, SharePoint, everything that we generate and we rely on to get our data, that's actually growing exponentially now. An Exchange mailbox 5 years ago, 10 years ago, might have been 100, 200, 500 megs. Now it's 100 gigs, okay? So the growth is significant. But probably more significant is when we look at things like the Internet of Things, okay? Which again, AWS is playing front and center and enabling these technologies. If you think about a connected car, think about a Tesla, okay? Maybe a few years ago, if a connected device was generating tens of megabytes of data, that was significant. These cars are generating gigabytes of data, okay? And that data needs to be available. But the problem with the growth of data is there's a sprawl of data as well. And you can see here we've got a couple of different locations. We've got traditional SaaS-based, private clouds, and public clouds, obviously where AWS sits. The fact is at the moment that obviously customers of yours or your enterprises, your businesses, are going to have data in different locations. How do you manage that? How do you keep it under control? So Veeam is very much about this intelligent data management. And part of that, in terms of our vision, was acquiring a company called N2WS, which Alex is from. We acquired this company in January, and really they do, I mean, Alex is going to go into a lot more detail, but they're a native AWS company that do backups from AWS EC2 instances natively within AWS. We saw a great opportunity and a great synergy with where we wanted to go in this space, so we obviously acquired them. And you'll see a little bit of information about that in the next few months if you're close to Veeam. Follow through because we're about to talk about partnerships between both engineering sides, or we'll be able to get through and create some really cool stuff. So just moving into today's talk, we're going to go through 3 different use cases and 3 different opportunities or solutions. We're going to talk about AWS Cloud Native Backup with Alex and N2WS. I'm going to talk about the virtual tape libraries, and then obviously finish off with VMware Cloud and AWS. So to talk a little bit about AWS with N2WS, I'm going to introduce Alex.
Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. Perfect. Thanks again, guys. So, as Anthony mentioned, it's been relatively new for us in the last couple of months. We've been a backup solution on AWS for the last 4 or 5 years through the marketplace. Number one solutions in the marketplace, actually, on the storage side of things. And obviously now with Veeam, we're taking that to the next level. So, at a high level, N2W is providing you backup and recovery and disaster for your EC2 instances in AWS. Thinking about that, when you're looking at AWS, there is a shared responsibility model. Now, that shared responsibility model combines both AWS and yourselves as users. The interesting piece of that is AWS secure everything for you around the cloud, so they give you the full responsibility of the cloud, and they're the most compliant solution out there, so cloud out there. But the user must take control of their security. So when you're looking at that, there are different segments that you're taking control over. And adding the user in is where you actually encounter those problems. So customer data is one, platform applications, identities another, operating systems, and your client-side data. So as we all know, adding users is what creates problems to that security. So you've got to think about the solutions you put in place in there, both for your data and other elements of that environment. So some of the standout features of CPM, N2WS's solution. So enterprise class data protection for AWS, data and services restored in under a minute. That's crucial if you're in a position where you have a data issue and you need to recover from that. You want to be able to recover as quickly as possible. We give you the ability to do cross-region and cross-account DR. That's key if you think about it from the perspective of recovering your data into the existing account that's been breached. Well, that's useless, right? Because you've now put your data back into that already breached account. So what you then do is you have a separate account, separate from your existing one, that you can recover into. And obviously strict compliance. Now, compliance is particularly a hot topic at the moment in EMEA with GDPR, but compliance is important everywhere. I'm sure you all go through a lot of steps to make sure that you meet compliance that your business has. Now, if you've gone through all those steps, and as we know, AWS is the most compliant out there, you've gone through all those steps. If you're then now introducing a new solution to that mix and interrupting that compliance, that's a problem. The way N2W works is we sit within your overall environment. So you have complete control with the CPM server, the N2W solution, in your AWS cloud. No data leaves. You have complete control over what happens. We don't even have visibility of that data. So you can decide what you do with it. You can decide how to use the tool. So what you'll see here is the ability, obviously, of disaster recovery across the AWS region. So you've got your EC2 instances sitting on that S3 base, EBS data volumes linked into that. It could be RDS as well, DynamoDB. And obviously then your different data types, so MySQL, etc., SharePoint, and the ability to place the CPM server and do backups cross-region and cross-account. We leverage the native snapshot capabilities, adding the reporting and the auditing on that, giving you that control, but crucially linking into that shared responsibility model. Now, imagine a situation where your business goes down just for 2 hours and you have to recover that. And during that period of time, you're a business that would lose money by not having access to that crucial data. Being able to recover within 5 minutes is, how much money would that save you? Thousands, millions maybe. It depends obviously on what you're doing. So this is why we feel it's important, and strongly recommend if you're not doing this today, you reach out to someone in Veeam or N2W and we'll introduce you in that respect. We already have a number of customers and partners using the tool. Obviously, working with startups, enterprises, integration providers, service providers, right across the board. Here are some of the ones that we work with across the globe today. Obviously, there are many, many more. Customers love the tool. Recommend you look at the AWS Marketplace. Like I said, #1 solution, the storage section on there. You'll see some of the great reviews we have around AWS and the solution and how easy it is to use, telling it's one of the best backup tools I've ever used, simplifying that for them. Recommending the product to everybody. Obviously, we've got some great giveaways, touching that at the end of the session about how you can get more around AWS and N2W. And back to you with that, I think, Anthony.
Yeah, and I think it should be said as well, you guys have seen the technology N2WS brings to Veeam. It's obviously different from where Veeam's come from.
Yeah, definitely.
But for mine, I'm a service provider guy from a long way back. I get excited about being able to tap into an AWS resource and be able to back that up natively. Previously, we had a different methodology for that. N2WS really completes that from a Veeam perspective. So, you know, I encourage you guys at the end to come and have a chat to us at the booth and talk about how it's a different, I guess it's a different way of backing up,
it's the agentless approach to backing up that environment, right? You're within AWS, agentlessly backing that up, and it's giving a new opportunity. If you're already on Veeam, that's great. If you're not, then it's an opportunity to look at Veeam, when in the past maybe there wasn't the solution in that space.
Exactly, that's right. So yeah, so I'll continue. I guess I like, even though the room's a bit dark, before I move on, I guess one of the questions I like to ask is in the room, is anyone a Veeam customer at the moment in the room? Can you guys raise your hands up high if you are? A couple? Okay, that's great. Has anyone not seen or heard of Veeam before? Can you guys? Okay. And the rest probably have. Okay, so it's a good 50-50 split. So what I'm going to go over now is talk a little bit more about traditionally, you know, what we can do and how we can get you guys to consume AWS. So the first thing is to talk about virtual tape libraries. And I guess another question I would ask is how many of you at the moment are still using physical tapes? Is anyone still using tapes? A lot of enterprises still do. Don't be embarrassed. It's not the worst thing in the world. But if you are, the general consensus is that tape as a medium can be problematic. And we're trying to solve that with AWS and offering this solution. We talk a lot about to, from, and within the cloud, okay? So obviously, you saw this any app, any data, any cloud messaging. We understand that you guys out here, you're consuming AWS services, but most likely as well, you might have some on-premises services as well, some workloads that are stuck on premises. So how are you going to back those up reliably? Obviously, that's a to-cloud scenario. N2WS, you know, within the cloud, that's basically where that sits. If we look at the cloud backups, so we're going to basically use the technologies from Veeam, using a virtual tape library, and use the AWS Storage Gateway to get that data up into an S3 or Glacier bucket. And how that works is you've got a Veeam backup and replication server that lives on premises. You've obviously got your production infrastructure, rather that, you know, that be any type of hypervisor that we support at the moment. And then you install your AWS Storage Gateway. And for those that haven't installed the Storage Gateway before, I can tell you it's a very simple process. It's actually quite amazing the way that they've actually been able to achieve the installation of an appliance from the cloud to an on-premises location. And what we're doing is we're basically taking that Storage Gateway. We're then saying that the VTL presents itself to Veeam Backup Replication. And that is it looks like a traditional tape library, but it's a virtual tape library. But really, where that repository is sitting is either locally on the Storage Gateway, or depending on the policy that you've got, it'll actually be farmed off to S3 straight away, and then maybe to Glacier as well. So again, it sends what it thinks is a tape backup. So same GFS retention that you guys might be used to. If you guys are using tape, you understand the concept of the GFS. That's the same mentality that we use with the virtual tape library, so it's no different. The only difference is it's going to disk to cloud, okay? And that final step is to basically take that data and put it into some real long-term retention, okay? To put it into Glacier, where you know that that data is going to be there. You might not need it in the short term, you might not need it for 5 or 10 years, but you know you might need it, okay? All for a compliancy perspective. So using this solution addresses a couple of pain points. It addresses the pain point of using a physical tape, which again, reliable in a way, but we all know that there's problems and the speed of recovery. But it's also talking about longevity. Where's your data going to end up? You know, these tapes, again, fair call, they're going to be there and available. But having said that, to have your data available from your Veeam solution, pulled back from S3, pulled back from Glacier, is a lot more reliable. And it's about that knowing that your data is safe. The criticality of that data is real. Here's a little bit of a case study that we did with the Southern Oregon University. Again, it was really trying to have a challenge of managing an old tape solution. The solution was basically to use Veeam plus the VTL and the Amazon Storage Gateway. And you can see some of the data that they're able to move, 30 terabytes of data per month up into AWS. Okay, that's a win-win for everyone in that scenario. So the last part that we're going to talk about is VMware Cloud and AWS. So this is obviously something that's quite significant and something that VMware has gone very heavy into when they announced it. So actually in 2016 in October, they announced the availability of this product. Last year at VMworld, it was brought live in the GA. At that time, Veeam was one of only 2 data availability solutions for that platform. Okay, so for those that don't know much about VMware Cloud on AWS, it's really taking VMware's on-premises platform and taking that onto bare metal AWS infrastructure. Okay, all the goodness of you guys using VMware on-premises is now basically the same tools. We're still talking about vSAN, we're still talking about NSX, we're still talking about vSphere and vCenter. Okay, but it's basically hosted within AWS. It's not quite here in Singapore just yet. It's obviously at the moment within the US, and they launched a UK zone more recently, but it's definitely coming into this region imminently. I'm sure they're doing testing. In terms of the basic architecture for it, again, we're talking about a customer location on premises. You might still have a vCenter there. You might still have workloads that sits on premises. But now what you have your vCenter that lives in the AWS cloud, okay, on that bare metal. Again, network connectivity between both the premises, it will extend to the Amazon location, and you'll be able to do migration services, okay, but you've still got to back up that data. And I guess the other key point about that is that now that you've got that sort of infrastructure within AWS, you can now leverage the native AWS services, okay, directly from that. The same account that you used to log on to AWS Cloud for the VMware Cloud, you can actually then connect to services within Amazon. The great thing about that is if it's within region, okay, it's all free. You don't pay for ingress, you don't pay for egress, and I'll touch on that why that's significant a little later on. If we look at the benefits of Veeam and VMware Cloud and AWS, for those that are existing customers, it's about familiarity, okay? There's nothing that changes from the point of view of protecting workloads, whether it sits on premises or within a VMware Cloud on AWS. We're talking about flexibility. So they're available to perform backup and replication, which is a key. A lot of competitors actually have a product that does backup, but not replication. So Veeam from the start, in fact, from the very start, was one of the first products and still one of the only sort of founding vendors that does backup and replication in the same product. And that's significant because that offers different points of RPO, different RTOs, depending on the particular workload. So having the ability to back up a workload as opposed to replicate it is something that's very advantageous for you guys. It's a trusted platform. So obviously Veeam, one of our tags for a long time was #1 backup for vSphere and VMware. We love VMware. Again, it's trusted. We're into version 9.5 and we're 10 years in as a company. So a lot of that maturity that we have on the platform is going to be available straight away to back up these AWS workloads. And then, again, simplicity. It just works. Another tagline that we use, I don't like to use that too much anymore, but effectively, as soon as you upgrade or if you've got deployed Veeam Backup Replication 9.5 Update 3, you'll be able to back up workloads within VMware Cloud and AWS using Veeam. And what we're trying to talk about succinctly here really is this 3-2-1 rule of backup. So that is 3 different copies of your data on 2 different medias and 1 offsite, okay? It's critical. This is not something that we've coined. This is quite an industry standard with regards to the 3-2-1 of data availability, okay? Traditionally, the offsite would be something that's a little bit different, but now when we talk about a VMware Cloud scenario on AWS, the offsite can become either an EBS volume sitting in an EC2 instance, or it can be offsite, depending on your type of solution. So it's really critical to get that one data location, that one restore point offsite of your workloads. looking at deployment models. So again, those that are familiar with Veeam will sort of recognize these diagrams. If we look at a simple deployment, we deploy what we call, obviously we've got the source ESXi host, which is the VMware Cloud host. We've got the backup server, which is the Veeam backup replication server, which is the brain of what's everything. It handles all the job management, all the policies. We've got a backup proxy, which becomes our data mover. Okay, the data mover is a thing that's actually shifting the data, whether that be local to a local repository, whether it be to an off-premises repository. That's what it's doing. And then that shifts it to a repository. And again, as discussed, that repository could be an EC2 instance. It could be even an S3 bucket in future versions. So that's where we're going in terms of that, having native object storage support. In terms of advanced deployments, it's not too different. The only thing that you would do differently in an advanced deployment scenario is you would deploy more proxies to scale. Veeam basically scales via our proxies and via repositories. So again, depending on how much hosts you've consumed in VMware Cloud and AWS or how many VMs you're running, depends on the model that you would take. In terms of going through and looking at how you would actually consume a service like this, what does the solution look like? The first use case is to back up out of VMware Cloud and AWS, okay? What I've talked about there, you've got your workloads sitting there, you still want to take them out because you still need to understand that things can go wrong. The VMware Cloud and AWS infrastructure is well managed by VMware, but it's not going to stop corruption of a VM. It's not going to stop a host going offline potentially. Those things can still happen. So again, you really want to make sure that you're getting that data off that location. And in this case, we've got the proxy talking to a repository. It's sitting in Amazon AWS and more than likely sitting on an EC2 instance. Okay, that could be anything that you want, but obviously we would like to put it into an EC2 instance, primarily because I talked about the fact that ingress and egress charges between those VMware Cloud and Amazon services are actually free within region. If we're looking to replicate, so again, this is a really good way of how you can offer replication services if you've got on-premises workloads, replicate them in to the VMware Cloud and AWS, okay? So have these workloads ready to go as replicas in case something happens on premises, okay? You need the network connectivity up and running, but effectively what we've got here is a solution where you can say on premises, replicate to VMware Cloud as a target and have those workloads ready to come up. And again, we're talking about really low RPOs, and especially what's more critical when we talk about replication is the restore time. To get a replica up is a lot quicker than getting a backup up, obviously. The last use case is to replicate from VMware Cloud outside, okay? So it's the reverse. Again, being able to have the VMware Cloud as the source and basically choose your on-premises location as a target, okay? Obviously, the caveat with this is that you're going to obviously be up for some ingress and egress charges depending on what it is. But again, if those charges are palatable, it's a very good solution for you guys. In terms of 9.3 update features, I'm not going to drain this too much because for those that aren't used to our solutions, it won't mean too much, but effectively you can do any of these things that you could expect in Veeam backup replication. Backup and restore, we can do file level restores of the VMs. We've got our Veeam Explorers, which touch applications, so we can restore and talk to Active Directory, to SharePoint, to anything that you've got going there. You can do backup copy jobs, which basically, again, take a secondary copy that doesn't impact the actual hardware. It doesn't do snapshot copies. It basically takes a copy from your backup itself, not impacting data. We've talked about VM replication, and then obviously backup to tape as well. You can implement that storage gateway. And one other point as well, because it's running vSAN on the VMware Cloud, we're actually quite aware of what's happening with the vSAN. We've got some logic that dictates where the data is transferring from. So we've actually got some smarts there. But if you guys want to find more, there's a KB link down there, and I'm sure you guys will get the slide. But there's a KB link there that basically shows this. So now I'm going to show a little bit of a video just to finish off. And this is good because obviously for you guys that haven't seen the Veeam Backup Replication Console or haven't seen VMware Cloud and AWS, it's a really good intro into it. So this is a vSphere web client. We're looking at VMware Cloud and AWS. We can see we've got a management cluster, we've got a resource cluster. We've gone in and we've actually gone and deployed the Veeam backup services within the VMware Cloud, okay? You can see we've got a Veeam backup server here. We're going to click into it. And again, the experience is if you had it on premises. We've got your Veeam server online running. We're going to go into the Veeam console. Again, for those who haven't seen it, very simple console, works really well, very intuitive. Couple of clicks and you're there. So what we're going to go through is when it loads up, we're going to show you how to connect into vCenter, because how Veeam works, you've got to register against a platform, whether that be the hypervisor type or a cloud instance. So we're going to go in here and basically see what that looks like. So we're going to go into the inventory view, and we're going to have a look at what it looks like. And the key thing here, when we're looking at a VMware Cloud versus an on-premises, is that the actual URL or the connection point that we're connecting to is an external connection. So we just saw it there go very quickly. We're using local credentials that we've got from the VMware Cloud, and we're going to hook in. The next step is to basically go and have a look at a job. Again, just to show you that there's no difference. The experience that you're getting using a VMware Cloud-based backup versus an on-premises backup is exactly the same. So again, we've gone here, we're going to take a look at the infrastructure, we're going to choose a repository, we've chosen some workloads, and we're going to back it up. So as this video rolls through, it's really just showing you guys again the console, the simplicity, and the ease of which you can now protect VMware Cloud and AWS infrastructure. So we'll go through. And I'm going to finish off with a company quote. This is from the VP of Products at VMware, Mark, and I'm not going to say the whole quote, but I think what we've talked about with the vision for Veeam, we've talked about N2WS, we've talked about some of these solutions that work in the hybrid world, on-premises and whatnot. Veeam's whole thing is looking to reduce cost, increase efficiency, and create operational consistency. And we believe that we can do that with flexibility and choice. So again, that's one of our strengths. And with that, I'm going to ask Alex to come back and talk about the bonus that we've got for you guys at the booth.
Great, thanks, Anthony. So yeah, so as I mentioned already at the booth, what we have right now is the ability to get an infrastructure credit of 250, just outside, just across there, the Veeam booth. 1 month free of Cloud Protection Manager, which is the N2WS solution. And obviously that infrastructure credit we just mentioned. Now, what you've seen today, hopefully, from Anthony and I, is that Veeam and N2WS can manage your backup and recovery and availability right across the stack, whether you're in AWS, VMware, etc. You know, we can cover it all for you in that respect. And this partnership and this acquisition, I think, gives Veeam the edge over anybody else out there.
Yeah, totally. So just a few takeaways, obviously, what we said. Come to the booth, have a conversation with us, you know, talk about how we can get your data protected, make it available with a lot of our solutions. We've got a lot more to offer as well, so we can have a chat about that. But for that, I think thank you, and we'll move on to the next session. Thank you very much.